Hi guys, I'm going to speak about why you're exhausted and maybe even invisible and you still can't hold it all. And I'm going to explain it from what's your four bodies are actually trying to tell you that we work with. So let's just say you've done the work, you've cleared the trauma, you've sat with the tension, and you've said yes to the things that terrified you. You've shown up, even when everything in you was screaming to hide, and yet something keeps collapsing. The money gets close and then it contracts, the visibility peaks, and then you pull back and the breakthrough comes, and then somehow, without even deciding to, you shrink. And you just can't figure out why. You can't figure out the life here. So I want to talk about that today because I watch it happen over and over again with the most gifted, most spiritually aware people that I know. And almost every single one of them thinks it's a mindset problem or a strategy problem or a discipline problem. It's none of these things. My name is Varney. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I've been bankrupt, rebuilt. I've lost 10,000 followers overnight during the launch and kept going. I've walked sacred lands on every continent. I've been trapped at 13,000 feet in a Buddhist monastery in Nepal. I made the newspapers many times. And I've received hundreds of feathers, physical, tangible, impossible to explain feathers, in places that I'd just been standing seconds before and nothing there. And even now, they still arrive. And every single one of these experiences taught me something about what it actually means to hold my next level. So this video is for the ones who are already awake, who already know, who just can't figure out why holding it all just still feels so hard. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the two biggest pain points I see in spiritually aware leaders. And these are the ones nobody wants to admit. And then I'm going to show you exactly what's happened across all the four of your bodies, the physical, the emotional, the psychological, and the spiritual, because the collapse isn't random, it has a map. And once you see the map, you stop fighting yourself and start working with what's actually happened. And this isn't theory. This is what I've watched happen in hundreds of people and what I built the Oracle Code to address. Now, you can hold everybody else's storm, but you can't hold your own expansion. And this is what happens. You may recognize something of not all of these steps. You may recognize a few. You're the ones who people call in a crisis, or you're the one who holds the field in the room, or you can sit with someone else's worst moment and not collapse. But when it comes to your own next level, visibility, money, leadership, something just fires and you contract. And what happens is you describe it as, I get close and then I self-sabotage, or I don't know why I keep pulling back. And you've tried all the positive thinking, more strategy, more healing, and it just keeps happening. So this is what's happening across the four bodies, the physical body. So what you feel is the body starts to tighten before, say, you're going to in a launch, or you're going to be visible, or you want more money. And that fatigue, it spikes when that visibility increases. Illness arrives just at the threshold of your next level, or the body, it's not betraying you, it's signaling it can't yet hold the voltage. Or what about the emotional body? The emotional body carries every time expansion is punished. The childhood where being too much was dangerous. The relationship where succeeding made you a target. Or it learned that being big isn't safe yet. So now it fires the brakes automatically, hence you go 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. And every time, especially every time you approach the edge, psychologically, there's a narrative, an unconscious narrative running underneath. Who am I to lead at this level? Or what if they see me I'm not as together as they think. The psychological body is still running the old code and is still comparing, is still measuring worth against performance. What about what's happening in the spiritual? The soul always knows. It's always more. But without a clean energetic structure, without what we call the hollow bone neutrality, the spiritual channel gets distorted by the noise of the other three bodies. And the signal's there, but the reception is off. Now, does this sound familiar to you? Because I want you to know this is not a character flaw. This is not lack of discipline. It's a capacity problem. And capacity can be built. Another pain point is you're away, but you're still not fully visible, and it's eating you alive. And so the pattern that you may recognize in yourself, that you've had the awakening. You know what you're here to do, but you're still hiding it. You're still half sharing it. You're still softening the edges. So you show up online and immediately wonder, oh my God, was that too much? Did that land? Did I sound unhinged? Am I too woo? Or you're exhausted by the performance of being spiritual without being allowed to be fully, unapologetically yourself. And then you watch others build and wonder why their signal isn't landing the way that you feel it should. And across the four bodies, the physical body carries the contraction of years of over-explaining, over-justifying, softening the truth that so others can handle it. The pattern lives in the jaw, the throat, the chest. That visibility, anxiety, it's not in the mind. It's held in the tissue or emotionally. There's grief here. Real grief for the parts of themselves they've kept small to belong. For the relationships they've compromised to be liked and palatable. For the version of themselves that never got to be seen. Or what about the psychological mind? It runs a constant editorial. Constantly editing before speaking, predicting reactions, managing perception. This is not confidence, coaching territory. This is deep psychological patterning around what it means to be seen, to be judged, to be wrong. And what's happened spiritually, energetically? You could be broadcasting from a partially blocked channel. You have a gift, you have the accuracy, the depth, the knowing, but the field is congested. And it's not with darkness, it's with conditioning, with a residue of every time that you're told you were too much, too rude, too intense, too certain. And here's the thing, you can feel it. You know when you're transmitting clean and when you're not. You know the difference between speaking from your actual truth, that performing the version of truth you think that they can handle. And that gap right there is where the exhaustion lives. And here's what people think the problem is. I need more healing. I need better boundaries. I need clearer messaging. They think if they just fix the strategy or do one more clearing, it'll click. But nobody's teaching them that what they actually need is structural capacity, the ability to hold what they're calling in across all four bodies simultaneously. And the truth about what's actually happening, they're not broken, they're just running a distorted signal. And the reason the money contracts, the visibility collapses, or the leadership falters, it's not mindset, it's coherence. So when the four bodies are not aligned, when the physical is braced, the emotional is just looping. The psychological narrative is running old code and the spiritual channel is congested. So what happens? Expansion becomes structurally impossible. You hit the ceiling of your current capacity every single time. And this is not a spiritual concept. This is how the system works. I've just run an experiment, the Worldwide Spiritual Experiment, and which was a leadership experiment. In fact, we're still in the launch. We've just finished the lives. And it's a multi-day live with a global group of awakened leaders, amazing people. But what I watched was fascinating. Some people move through the tension with presence, some collapse, not because they weren't gifted, and not because they weren't awake, but because their system didn't yet have the structural capacity to hold the field and hold themselves. And the ones who collapsed needed what I've spent 20 years building. And the ones who held it, they needed to know why they could, so they could do it on purpose, not just when conditions were right. Now, I mention the feathers in almost everything I create because they're the most vivid personal proof that the invisible has intelligence. Not metaphorically, physically. Hundreds of feathers in places I've just been standing in ways that can't be rationally explained. Even after all those years, they still land. And what's that taught me? Beyond the wonder of it is when your channel is clean, when you're aligned, when you're not congested with performance and noise and old code. The intelligence of the field moves through you. That is what we're building towards, not mysticism for its own sake, precision, clean transmission, structural alignment. And I want you to walk through 4 things as a map, because once you can see what's actually going on in each of these areas, everything I just described starts to make sense, and more importantly, it becomes workable. So, in our pillar 1 is alignment. You reconnect to your original blueprint, you clear distortion, you establish the energetic posture, and most people are trying to hold expansion are doing it with a distorted baseline. They're aligned to the old version, the version that learned to be small, strategic, careful. Alignment work is not positive thinking. It is returning the system to its original blueprint before they condition into it. So we look at the paradox of the self, the internal tension, that I want this, but I'm scared of it feeling. It's not a problem to solve. It's a friction required for neurological and energetic upgrade. If you rush to resolve the discomfort, you collapse the heat that is supposed to create expansion. And most people do this. They reach the relief right before the breakthrough. And then we have hologram healing. Bring that in. Every presenting issue, financial contract, visibility fear, leadership collapse, has a signal running across all 4 layers: the physical density, the emotional imprint, the psychological narrative, spiritual timeline. Working on one without the others is why most people cycle without breakthrough. So when the 4 bodies are aligned, no fix by the way, aligned, your capacity to hold expands naturally without force. And then we're going to pillar 2, the awareness. We activate your multi-dimensional intelligence so we sharpen your channel. Most spiritual leaders are only using a fraction of their perception field. They have the intuition, but it's filtered through old emotional programming, unresolved psychological patterns, and that physical bracing when that signal arrives. And then it gets edited. Awareness work is about expanding the channel so you're reading situations, clients, rooms, your own field with precision, not projection. And then we open the evolution chakra, the part of your system that is receiving higher level intelligence. And most people have it active but unstructured. And when it's structured, as you've already noticed, your channel sharpens. You stop second guessing. You stop the constant mental editorial that's going on. And for healers and coaches that are already certified, most of your training taught you technique. Awareness work teaches you to read the living hologram of the person in front of you. What's actually running, not just what's presenting. Because awareness without structure is overwhelm, and structured awareness is precision. And precision is what makes a leader trustworthy. To themselves first, and then to everyone else. And then we're going to pillar 3, purification. We end the loops. We clear the ancestral karmic patterning that's not yours to carry. And this is the one people most underestimate, because the loops they're running often don't feel like theirs. An ancestral pattern around money and visibility, leadership, safety, it predates them, but it lives in the body, in the emotion field, in the decisions that they make. And then we have the 24-strand DNA recalibration, not metaphorical. This is about restoring the coherence across the full energetic template. When karmic and ancestral loops are running, expansion is structurally compromised. You keep hitting the same ceiling because the same code keeps firing. And then we connect you to the central column of light, the CCL, and the soul's original axis of intelligence, where it's clear you make decisions from truth, not from survival. Because when it's congested, you mistake it, the voice of the wound, for the voice of wisdom. Trust me, I've done it many times. And then we have that pain point connection, the pattern of self-sabotage right before the breakthrough. So you check what's running in the ancestral line around being seen, having money, being powerful. It's almost never yours, but you're living it as if it is. And the purification is not about becoming someone else. It's really about removing what is never you. So what is you can operate without interference. And then pillar 4, the creation round. And this expands your capacity to hold what you're calling in, to co-create without ego interference. And this is where most spiritual programs stop at desire and call it manifestation. The Oracle Code does not teach manifestation, it teaches timeline capacity. Your nervous system must be able to hold the voltage of your next level, financially, energetically, in terms of visibility and leadership. If it can, your timeline just collapses. Not because you're not worthy, but because the system isn't yet structurally ready. Source-led transmission, the difference between building from the mind, from strategy, from hustle, from survival patterns, and building from coherence. Because when your channel is clean and your system is aligned, what you create just lands differently. And by the way, not because you've tried harder, but because the signal was cleaner. And the people who held the field in the experiment, who stayed present through the tension, who didn't collapse, who led without losing themselves, that's what they were doing. They were doing this. And not from training yet, but from natural capacity. So can you imagine doing it on purpose, with a structure that supports it? Because some people will have done that and then they'll have went back to reset to their default. Because that's what we do. Creation doesn't respond to desire, it responds to coherence. And this is the part most people skip. And it's why the gap between what they know they're capable of and what they're actually experiencing, it feels so maddening to them. And these 4 pillars, they're not a linear journey. They spiral, they deepen, and each time you move through them, your capacity expands, your channel clears, and your leadership stabilizes. And the things that used to collapse you, the visibility, the money, the holding of other people's processes, you start to become things that you hold with ease. And this is what this works for. So waking up and trusting your own signal, and not because you've convinced yourself, but because the channel is clean and the accuracy is undeniable. Visibility that doesn't cost you everything, being fully seen as a whole version of yourself and not needing to apologize for it to explain it down. Or money moving without the contraction, not because you've done another mindset course, but because your system has expanded its capacity to hold it. And holding clients feels, group feels, your own life without collapse, and not performance, stability, actually having it. The gap between who you know you are and what you're expressing to the world. To take, for instance, me being a digital nomad. You know, have I come through some tension? Oh, by God, we got marched out of China. We got not let into South America. I'm having no flight, not getting in. So many things, a relationship ending, where I kept walking through the tension into my own agency, my leadership. So here's what I want you to take from this. The exhaustion, the contraction, the visible ceiling. It's not a failure of belief. It's not a lack of healing. It's a structural capacity issue. And it is solvable. But not with another round of the same work. It's visible, but with a framework that actually addresses all 4 layers. The alignment, the awareness, the purification, and the creation simultaneously. Because the Oracle Code is a 16-week practitioner certification. It's not a course. It's a living architecture, a recalibration sequence for leaders who came here to hold more visibility, more money, more leadership, more truth, without burning out in the process. And if you watch this video to the end and thought, holy shit, that is me, the recognition is the invitation. The link's in the description below. Come and find out more, or come and see if you're ready to stop navigating this alone and start building the structure capacity that makes everything else possible. I'll see you inside. Speak to you later.